Tony, I played a point and click cooking game about an Indian family immigrating to Canada, and I did not expect it to be one of my favorite games I've played this year. Like,
That is crazy.
it's like this was on Game Pass, and I think
Right.
it maybe potentially was going off Game Pass.
Oh, it's one of
And
those
yeah, I can't remember if it was
services.
definitely it was a game that it was on Game Pass, and I just heard really good things about it from people I respected, and they were saying it's this really short, little, sweet narrative game. And I said, you know what? I've heard it's like a few hours long, and there's no real disadvantage to giving this a try. I really love Venba. So essentially, it's about this immigrant family, but it really the core story of Venba is it's a story about family. It's a story about the connections the son has with his parents, and I think that was something that really resonated with me, was how much we can take our parents for granted and our relationship
Yeah.
with them. But basically, also another thing with Venba is you're cooking Indian recipes, and in the UK, we have quite a few uh, Indian immigrants, and we have like a big culture of like Indian dishes here.
Yeah.
So
And Anglicized
like
Indian
some of the
dishes.
dishes, like one of the dishes, the biryani, I've legitimately made a biryani before. So like I was
Yeah.
making it again, and I
I
was like,
saw that.
oh shit, how do I make a biryani again? Like I did it when I was a teenager studying cooking at school.
Oh,
But I
right.
was like,
Okay.
I remember the tomatoes, I remember the rice. I don't remember much else. Um, but the whole thing is like the game. You're looking at this recipe book of her mother to because they've moved over to Canada, and they want to keep the flavors of their home, right? But
Yeah.
the recipes themselves have imperfections on them, so you have to kind of, it's sort of like a puzzle game in a way, where you kind of have to figure out the exact sequence of the way that you
Right.
put stuff in and the exact things you put in. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like deduction as well, because you can basically go through the entire thing and it'll be like, that's not quite right. So you go through and you're like, oh, I have to try this thing instead, right? But
Is it more tactile stuff like you like moving stuff around as well? Like
yeah, I think like
from other
the
stuff?
animations and like the
Yeah.
almost tactile feel to like doing each individual step of the cooking feels like really interesting. And made it like the sounds and the animations genuinely made this like a really cool experience. I think there was only like maybe one recipe where I was like, because there was like a hint system if you get stuck. There was only like one recipe where it was like, oh, okay, I am not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, sort of thing.
What was this first one you were making?
What is this?
Some sort of battered.
Hang on, I can go back and have a look. I actually don't remember what this was. But I'm specifically turning the pot in order to like make sure the
Yeah.
steam holes aren't covered.
Yeah.
Idli
That's
plate.
fascinating.
Idli is it called idli.
Italy?
Some of the like
Yeah.
I know biryani because that's like a curry dish
Yeah.
that is commonly eaten in the UK. Most of these,
Yeah.
I'd never heard of them genuinely. So it was like cool to experience like new stuff. I can maybe
That
skip
is
ahead a
cool,
bit.
yeah.
But in
Learning
between
about
these
culture through
cooking,
food.
you get like this relationship of basically the father struggling to find a job in Canada that pays well and puts money on the table, and he's like, back in India he had like a good paying job, but he's struggling to get even like a a low-paying job, and he just wants to provide for the family, sort of thing. And how much this game is like an hour and a half long. Like how much do I want to go into spoilers?
That's not that much.
Yeah.
Well, are you saying people go out and play this then?
I think people should
For
people should go out and play
experience,
this. Yeah, like it's genuinely like a good narrative experience, and I think the actual the gameplay of making these recipes feels quite impactful. Like it is nice, and
right.
it has like an almost tactile feel to it. It is a really cool experience. But I say, like, just to go more into the story stuff, like it's the story of how like setting your pride apart for family. There's even like, well, not directly shown. There's like implied racism, and then there's like there's like that with the child growing up, he starts to like reject the Indian culture because of the bullying or the fear of bullying he will receive. Like it goes into like a lot of these social elements when it comes to your heritage and where you come from, and your heritage and where you come from is like your parents. It is your ancestors, your family, and it's like it's such a great story of being like wanting to be accepted by new people, but not wanting to shun the people that you already have and who love you.
Yeah. You want to make sure both.
That's sort of like the first part of Venba, and then am I going into spoilers in this episode? I'm asking you because I can.
I don't know how spoiler are you talking about the whole thing?
The whole game. I pretty much have to talk about the whole game because it's a very short game.
Okay.
So if you want to do a spoiler timestamp,
spoilers tag. Yeah.
I mean, are you going to play Venba?
Yeah.
You will.
But I don't mind being spoiled. So.
Okay, so like, it eventually gets to a point where you've basically grown up. You start to like slowly lose contact with your parents, and then I think the father, he dies, and your mother moves back to India, and basically you work for like a TV show, and they're like, "Oh, you're like our Indian guy. Can you get some Indian recipes for this show?" And then you start the game as the mother reading her mother's recipes, but you then end the game as the son reading her recipes and her annotations and her notes, and you reconnect with your parents through food. And it is like this really fulfilling experience. And it is like deeply, like I was literally finished the game and I was crying. I was like, this is such a worthwhile emotional experience. Like it is really, really heartwarming. And I think like Venba touched me as like a human story. Just
I think
like
it is clever to use food as a cultural connection.
Yeah, like food connects everybody, right? And I've never been to India or Canada or had to deal with immigration or anything like that. But Venba was a really important story for me, and I really enjoyed this game, and I would recommend anyone to play it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard good things about this, like, but not anything specific, like from I guess other media and stuff on YouTube. So.
But yeah, I'd just say like
nice to see.
I played this without like very much, expectations, and I went away being like, this is one of my favorite games that I've played this year. This is like a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. I didn't give it a 5 because it was so short, and also because not that length is important, but some of the puzzles I struggled with and had to use hints for. Okay. So like, it's not a game where I'm like, yeah, this is when I consider a 5 out of 5 game, I'm like, this game does something interesting or has an emotional impact, but also has like tight killer gameplay, amazing music, great sound. Like it has everything. Like Neon White was my game in 2022, but it wasn't a 5 out of 5 perfect game. It had a lot of flaws.
Yeah.
It just did the stuff it did well so well. It overcame a lot of these flaws.
In a way, you got like a system of like how well, with the flaws it has, and multiplied by how well it executes it. It's kind of like the total feeling about it.
But yeah, that's Venba. Let's move on to spoilers over. We're talking about Dave the Diver. So Dave the Diver is a game I went into because I was like, I've heard really good things about Dave the Diver. Also, you're Japan, Tony. It's a game inspired by Japan, but it's made by Korean people. But it's Korean people inspired by Japan. So like I watched an interview with the director, and he was like, because obviously it's a diving game where you run a sushi bar, and sushi is Japanese cuisine. And the director is like, yeah, the actual place where you go diving, where you just have this huge blue ocean that's full of every single fish in the ocean, is actually directly inspired by One Piece. So he was like, yeah, like it's very like, and there's also like in the game there is straight up like the guy who sells you weapons is like a what I can only describe as how I picture every single weeaboo, which is like this overweight guy sits in he's like, I need my Leah Chan's figure. I need, because there's a side mission where like Leah Chan's gets put in the ocean and you have to go and rescue it, and then he has like a fever dream about a Leah Chan's concert, and it turns into like a DDR game. Dave the Diver starts off very simple and becomes very like gamey very quickly. So the core gameplay of loop of Dave the Diver is you essentially are a diver. You go into the ocean, you have a limited amount of weight and attack and what you can pick up and interact with. You take what you catch. You then go to the sushi bar with Bancho, and he then turns that into a sushi, which you then, the second half of the game, is a management sim for a sushi bar. And you basically, you go, oh, I've got this fish, I'm going to enhance it, I'm going to hire staff, I'm going to, serve drinks, and you basically, you get a bunch of money, and then with that money, you reinvest into the either the sushi bar or your diving equipment. So you have a guy called, what's his name? Dave. I literally played this like a couple of weeks ago. Bancho's the chef, Dave the diver. Cobra's his name. I didn't look it up, but it just came to me. Cobra sells you equipment. Not that knowing the names of these characters is important, but yeah, I do genuinely think the actual the characters of Dave the Diver are like one of its strengths. Like I love the pixel art, and I think that is like one of the good things. So I'm dying here because Dave the Diver has a lot of like gating mechanics, I would describe them as. And one of them is how much oxygen you have will limit how deep you can go. How much there's a mechanic where you can only go a certain depth in the ocean based on how high the rank of your suit is. But Dave the Diver kind of exists on like it reminds me of like some of these more Japanese games I've been playing. Obviously this is Korean, but it's very much based on a calendar system where it's like diving in the morning uses up part of your day, diving in the afternoon uses up part of your day, and then your evening is sushi, and then you go on to the next day, and then you have these like set calendar events. This is Duff, the anime guy. You have these set calendar events where it's like, okay, there's going to be a tuna festival in like a week's time. So the entire time I'm going diving, I'm thinking about the tuna festival. I'm like, well, I don't want to serve any tuna at my sushi bar right now because if I went into the tuna festival, I'll get double money. It starts off very simple. As Dave the Diver goes on, it starts to get more and more complicated, and that's when we get like more and more characters. So, some of the characters you introduced to earlier, like Dr. Bacon, and Dr. Bacon's like, I'm an archaeologist, I think there's mermaid people under the ocean. And basically, you start to go on this quest of talking to mermaid people called sea people underground. And then once you find them, that adds this entire like side quest of doing missions for the sea people onto your stuff. And then, you speak to the woman who used to hire Bancho as a chef at her restaurant, and that goes off on this whole side quest of being like, oh, I can help you hire people. So she helps you hire better people for your restaurant, and then she helps you with like the VIPs, and you get this VIP system where it's like what's his name, Michael Bang, the like the director of the samurai robot movies. That his signature thing is he puts loads of explosions in his films, which is obviously a tongue-in-cheek reference to Michael Bay.
Yeah.
But I think Dave the Diver is at its strongest when it really nails this core gameplay loop, and I think it also nails like the characters and the animations. I've got to like try and find like the animation of of like Bancho. So like here's an animation of a gun being crafted for you.
Why is it okay? Sure.
Yeah, I think this is so charming, and it adds so much like depth to the game, like in terms of like, well, no depth, but it adds so much charm to the game, sort of thing.
I like the Michelangelo human god replaced with a human robot.
And that will happen I think that happens like the first time you craft a weapon, and then if you do more stuff after that point, it like skips it. But there is unique animations. There's a couple of unique animations for everything, so it's always interesting to see them. Like one of my favorite ones is definitely the sushi bar. I think I saw it on the. Okay, here it is. So this is enhanced. So you can, when you have more than one piece of the same fish, you can put them together and enhance them to make them cost more, because you can't always sell too much in one day. So it's better sometimes to put sushi together to make it better by enhancing it. And this is probably my favorite enhancing animation in the game. Is you cut up this piece of sushi, and one of the fishes in the fish tanks is just watching you cut up this sushi. He's like, oh god, is that going to happen to me? Which I'm just like, this is hilarious. Like when Dave the Diver is good, it has so much like great tongue-in-cheek stuff, right?
Yeah. That is really
and cool. I think it is like it feels good because Dave the Diver doesn't feel aimless a lot of the time. It does have this constant like, you feel like you're constantly being pulled through a story. No matter what, every time I go diving, I'm like, okay, I am just doing this core gameplay loop, but it's like I'm furthering this story of stuff going on. I don't want to, because like me telling you what happens in the chapters is kind of considered spoilers, I would say. Like even me telling you about mechanics that come later on could be considered spoilers. Because like
the mermaids.
Yeah, like the sea people don't come around to like chapter 2 or chapter 3, and I think there's about I want to say like 6 to 8 chapters. I can't 100% remember, but like that. So this is the sushi part. There's the mini game of like trying to pour the perfect amount of sushi and then taking the sushi to the customers. Then you can hire additional staff. So like I got to a point where I had 2 extra chefs and 2 extra servers. And then I was leveling up my servers. So then, because I was like, oh, I hate doing the mechanic of pouring things. But if you level up your waiting staff enough, you can get them to pour drinks instead of you. Which I was like, oh, this is so much better. And each individual person you hire has their own like unique talents and traits. Or you can, there's always stuff to do in like the serving phase. It's like taking people's stuff over, cleaning up, making sure you have enough wasabi, because the sushi chef won't be able to make more dishes unless you grind the wasabi.
That makes sense.
And then basically when you run out of, because there's a certain amount of times you serve items. If you run out of items to serve, you just serve, I think it's like, they're like basically sushi rolls, like California rolls, is that what you would call them? I can't remember. But like basically just normal sushi rolls. And then if people wait too long for like a drink or a sushi dish, they'll just get angry and leave, sort of thing, which isn't good.
Okay, yeah.
And the way the menu works is you have what's called Cookster, which is basically like Instagram. And as you progress through the game, how many likes you have on Instagram changes like how many people you can employ and how many people come to the restaurant. And you get these things called artisan flames, which let you unlock new recipes. And of course, they have their own unique animation that plays. I think like there's a lot of stuff like I really loved about Dave the Diver when it comes to, you know, the characters, their interactions, the core gameplay, the animations. I think Dave the Diver gets really bogged down in the second half of the game when you start to like get more and more of this stuff where it feels like, oh, I need to do a mission for the sea people, but I also need to go here to do this, but I also need to go to my farm to go and get my crops and water them, but also at the same time, tuna is in 2 days, so I need to capture tuna, but then also at the same time, I need to go and plant my underwater seeds, and then I need to do this and it's like, I started to get like, for people who love stuff like RuneScape or like Ubisoft games, it's like, you can have a billion things to do and you can play 100 hours of this game, but for me, I was like, I just want to finish the story and complete the game and be done with it because I'm starting to get tired of all the extra mechanics, right?
It's just too many things.
For me, I actually genuinely came out. I went into this like, well, I like the diving stuff and I won't like the sushi bar management stuff. I actually really liked the sushi bar management stuff. I thought it was super interesting. I think that genuinely was like a really, really cool thing that I got into. I would say, like, I wanted Dave the Diver to be more like an underwater Metroidvania, but it was much more of like a time-gated management game, I would say.
I guess is it a bit of both, or is it more time management more than...
It's, well, the idea, there is like areas you can't get to until you get like a certain diving depth and you need certain items and stuff like that. But it's very much more about this idea of, oh, let's keep adding more mini games to Dave the Diver. It gets to, and I'm like, right. I just want to progress through the story and the chapters. And some of the mini games are like good ideas. And there was a chapter where you switch between characters and you solve these puzzles that I won't go into for spoilers, but was really interesting. But there was a lot of like mini games where it's like, oh, this is the same thing but slightly different. It's not very interesting. Or, oh, I'm fighting another boss in Dave the Diver, and I'm seeing I'm starting to see the cracks. I'm starting to see, combat in Dave the Diver is kind of weak.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, not quite repetition, but stuff that didn't need to be there, and just like added for game length.
Dave the Diver has a lot of like fat, and it depends if you like fat in your meat or not. Yeah. I personally would trim the fat, and I would make Dave the Diver a more lean game. But I understand that there's people who will play Dave the Diver and they'll love the fat.
Yeah. There's charm to it. There's always something for someone, I suppose. Yeah.
Like, I think it took me about 24 hours to complete Dave the Diver overall. But I know there's people who've played Dave the Diver and they're like, oh, I have like 100 hours in Dave. I could see why you would, get lost just... Because you can continue to play Dave the Diver after you finished it, and you can like do what I did. I was sort of more beelining for to finish the game, but like I was still like trying to capture bonus stuff whenever I could. Or it's like, oh, there's a photo spot here. Let me take a photo. Like there is so many Tony. There's so many random mechanics in this. You can get a Tamagotchi on your phone. There's entire little games inside the game on your phone. Like there is so much side content in Dave the Diver, but if you know me, you'll know that I spend most of my time in games these days trying to just avoid the side content because it's not stuff I really find I enjoy too much.
Yeah, you just want the interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I'd rather, instead of spending another 80 hours in Dave the Diver, I'd rather go and play another Venba.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy Dave the Diver for what it was. Like, again, I got a little tired towards the end, so I gave Dave the Diver 3.5 stars. I think it was above average overall, but it wasn't like, oh, you have to play Dave the Diver. You have to sit and complete Dave the Diver sort of thing. It's a fun game for what it is, but it's not like an exceptional game. It is a nice, relaxing game, and if you're looking, it's a good podcast game. It's a good thing to be like, I'm going to go for a dive on Dave the Diver while I go and, listen to a podcast or watch a TV show or something. I played it on the Steam Deck and I'm like, this is the perfect Steam Deck game. Again, like I talked about Cat Quest on the previous Tangerine. It reminds me of like Cat Quest. It's like a 3.5 star game. It's a slightly above average game that is pretty fun to put on, casually sort of thing. And I think that is one of Dave the Diver's biggest strengths.
It does look. I don't know. Is cozy a good way to describe it?
Yeah, it's a cozy game for sure. I would say.
I've seen people say it. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a cozy game. If you like stuff like Stardew Valley, you will like it like literally has that like time-based farming mechanic in the game. It reminded me of that.
I think mechanics being explained to me, like I'm actually more interested in playing it now than I was. Like I didn't quite get what it was about before. I don't think, or not properly anyway.
Well, I think the upgrades are interesting as well because you have the ability to upgrade your oxygen, but the way oxygen works is you can see like some of the species you encounter underwater are invasive species and they'll attack you. So when you get attacked, oxygen is also your health. So upgrading oxygen is really good because it's like double pronged. You get more health and you can go further underwater. And you have to like manage your oxygen. Like if you're fighting something, if you get too injured, then you won't be able to keep breathing. And the way it works, if you run out of oxygen, you basically you are done for the day and you lose everything except for one item. So you get to keep one item from everything you've got. And the way it works is there's weight mechanics, so you can upgrade your carry bag to get more weight, or you can upgrade like the damage of your weapons. You can craft new weapons. Like there's a lot of stuff to keep that loop going I played it for 24 hours and I enjoyed playing through and finishing Dave the Diver. There's enough to keep it going, but it's just not like I would have loved an underwater Metroidvania game, a game that wasn't like gated behind time and was just like, hey, just keep exploring and get new movement mechanics, then you can go to this cool area underwater. Is there an underwater Metroidvania game? I actually have no idea.
I can't think of one. I don't know. I can't think of a famous one at the very least.
What was I going to say? I was listening to the Outer Wilds soundtrack the other day, and I was watching some videos on the Outer Wilds, and somebody described the Outer Wilds as a Metroidvania, and I was like, oh my god, that's the perfect way to describe the Outer Wilds. It is like, it's literally like a knowledge Metroidvania, and that's why I love games like that so much. Like, that's why I love the Outer Wilds, because it is that satisfying mechanic of, I couldn't go here because I didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah, that is really cool.
But yeah, Dave the Diver, recommend. Venba, I would highly recommend. So we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.